We're good to go? All right, let's call this meeting to order then. Thank you all for making our rescheduled meeting after our grown-up snow day last time. You've had a chance to take a look at the minutes that were circulated by email prior to the meeting. If people have, is there a motion to approve them? I see a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the minutes? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries. We have a number of communications this month. We had Cornell City Fire send in their renewal application, which is one of these many pieces of paper in front of me. I'm not sure which one it is. It looked okay in the form that I saw it initially. So if nobody has any objections, can I have a motion to approve that? Motion here, and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries. The next one is the Canasteo Fire Department application for EPCR use, which I think was more of just an FYI.
Endorsement. Looking for an endorsement.
Looking for endorsement, okay. Again, seemed like everything was in order to me.
Right, that's a council endorsement, I believe.
Both. They're gonna bring it, show it over to you.
Okay.
We already did this one.
We already did, the council already did, you mean?
Yeah, the council already did Springwater Wayland, so I was just following.
Yeah.
We still have kind of Canasteo and Bath to do.
Springwater's just a report that they're complete.
So both, so can we give a motion for Canasteo to approve that? And a second, I saw over there. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Bath, another EPCR endorsement. Again, it looked okay to me when I looked over it.
Theirs is merely an update.
Okay.
Right, they changed vendors, correct? Is it what the-
Yes.
I guess I need a motion for that one too. Going all jump at once, thank you. And a second there. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Hooray, we're flying through these things. And then the state approval for Springwater Wayland EMS to use EPCR.
Just to let
I
you know.
don't think that I saw that.
Right, it's just.
That's just
complete.
that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter Brody sent down a completion, just for your knowledge, it's up there all done.
So, we're all aware of that. Mike just handed me Steuben County BLS, first response, the sheriff's department, which I think is a really exciting thing that all the sheriff's deputies in Steuben County are going to be EMT basics. Is that the goal, Mike? So, if that all gets pulled off, I think that'll be a great asset to a large portion of our region. I have not had a chance to look through this. Mike, take a look at
I took a short look through it,
it.
and it has some pieces that were missing. So, I've put together a half a dozen or so of those over the years, south corners and north corners. And, so I'd be happy to meet with them and help them put the rest of the pieces together. There were some policy issues in this, and things like equipment lists, how the system was going to work, to what extent they were going to provide. And we can actually pull one of those other applications and help them.
But it sounds like then if this application is not fully complete, we can't vote on it right now.
Correct.
So
There's
we'll
some things that's going
Table that to next meeting.
Can they endorse it, the action?
No.
You all approve, not until it's complete.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there would be an endorsement and
And quite honestly,
application.
let me just back up and point out that the REMA Act nor the state has any authority to regulate first response. Their application merely is an application for an agency code, which gets them state tuition funding. They're under no obligation to become a first responder. to follow the hoops. This is purely a funding mechanism. And the same holds true for our fire departments and other entities in the region. The state will, Article 30 doesn't provide any regulatory authority, nor does the REMAC have any regulatory authority in CFR.
So if we have no regulatory authority, why are we voting to approve these things?
I don't remember them coming to the REMAC in the past.
They asked that we pass it through them,
Right,
I just shot it up them, and that was their pushback.
correct. But, yeah, so that's how it works.
Okay. I also, as I'm sure some of you also have received a letter about Watkins Glen International and their CON. So they are looking to add their own ALS service at the track. This is the third or fourth time they've gone through this process. And this time they have sent out letters to supposedly everybody who they could think of, asking for a letter of support.
That was one of the deficiencies they noted in their last CON application is that they did not do enough. And so all they have to do is get the adjoining agencies, but they went beyond that. So, which is no problem. I mean, there's no action required for anybody who receives that letter. You can ignore it and throw it away, or you can send in a letter of support if you wish.
Sounds like we're all on the same page about that and did justice.
Yeah, and my position, from the council's perspective, the last time around was to kind of stand silent on it because we're going to be judging.
Perfect.
We're going to be judging the application, so you guys are free to do what you want.
I felt no need to write a letter of support when I received that. If other people on the committee feel differently, I would be happy to write one on our behalf if a majority of us feel like it's something we should be doing. I will take your silence as the fact that I recycled a letter would be a good thing. All right, on to our old business. RSI protocol, any updates there, Rob?
Not really, I mean, there still hasn't been expressed a large need for us to be doing it. I know some of the paramedics have expressed interest, but there was no reports on how many times it would have been utilized. So if there's not a huge need for it, we may not progress very far with it at this time until such a need arises.
Could I suggest possibly, and it's one of those things that I think it's hard to gauge need until it's available. Maybe develop a small pilot program with maybe one or two people from each of the ALS agencies, handpicked, and kind of culture it that way.
Yeah. That was the nature of the protocol, was to be, each agency could appoint one or two people to be allowed to do so,
But there was no requirement on
but
agency.
there was no requirement for the agency to do so. The person who had brought it up in the first place said that he would look into a little bit to find some more about how often we would potentially
I
try
tried
to use this.
doing a retrospective look through our charting system, but unfortunately, there's no checkbox for damn, I wish I had RSI.
Well, there was also,
You know,
but there was also some talk about trying to get in touch with the surrounding regions and find out how often they utilize it to compare us to other places.
I know that NORAMS has just rolled out a new program. And actually, as we chart it there, we've got an ability to notify the region if RSI was requested and was available, or if it was considered either utilized or deferred. But I think their new program is rather onerous. The requirement was, one of the requirements was for 10 intubations in that region. I've been there a little over 3 years, I've got 4. But I'm in the area that's sometimes an hour from the hospital.
Yeah,
So-
understand.
You know, the guys that are getting the larger number of tools are in the areas with higher call volume that are closest to the hospitals, which,
Sean and Brandon, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but you guys live in both worlds, on the helicopter and on the ground. So what's your opinion on RSI? I know on the helicopter you do RSI frequently, but on the ground.
You want to speak first?
I'll let you go.
I believe that, and this is my opinion I shared in the summer, if trained right, the right providers are chosen, there's 100% chart review by the region, not just the agency, by their medical director. I believe the program can work. I really do. But that being said, it shouldn't be doled out to everybody. You should have some pretty strict guidelines, although I do agree with Donnie, ML Rems's guidelines are incredibly prohibitive. Somewhere I think there's a happy medium in there. I think there needs to be oversight, but I think they really tighten that.
I guess I was actually kind of looking for more, what do you guys think? that-
Yeah, you know,
I
so,
think
right,
like any advancement.
correct, yeah, I guess I'll redact that.
I mean, I live in this community too, so any advancement in the community of service that we can provide, and we can explore it safely with all these components in place, is
I
always
think
something.
it can be done
It can be
right.
done. It just takes a lot of oversight and a lot of
Yeah.
time.
And you would need, at minimum, you'd probably need some sim learning, at a bare minimum. I know we've kicked this around before, I don't know if a cadaver lab is a viable alternative down here due to the drive, but at a minimum, you would need sim.
I mean, even with our call volume and the number of
To
providers,
bridge that
the
gap,
number of
exactly.
providers we have,
Right.
I mean, our
Right.
innovations aren't really super high either, so.
So,
For me, it's looking more for the critical care paramedics, the paramedics that
Yeah.
are taking these super sick people on 2 or 3 or 4 hour transports, and if someone goes south and they are 30 minutes from the closest emergency room and they need to intubate somebody and they're having a difficult time, it's then.
But I don't think-
To me, that's the person that.
right, agreed, but I don't think it should be just limited to a transport setting, we talked about that in the summer. I do think I do think it's applicable to the 911 call. So,
I think where I would suggest maybe you could improve on Norris's formula. Like I said, they look strictly at a number of intubations that arbitrarily 10. In my mind, if you have a candidate that's identified for the program, maybe part of the interview process is not necessarily to just look at the number of successful tubes, but dig into their airway management history. Look at the times when they chose not to intubate. Look at the times when maybe their intubation is documented as a failed attempt, but they were stuck with a patient that probably the best of people wouldn't have got.
Good airway management isn't always intubation.
correct.
Um,
Yeah, and we try to, in the ER, to avoid it at all costs, but, the other question, with the number of tubes and everything is, yeah, the competency at one point was there, but have they maintained it? How many intubations they have to do in a year? Because once you RSI somebody and they're paralyzed, you lose control of that airway completely if you can't intubate them, if you can't get something down there. So that's the other thing, is making it restrictive so that we know exactly who's doing it. We can assure that they are competent and recently competent, not just at one point knew exactly what they were doing.
Because you're really looking at your whole airway program. Your backup, even your backup airways, even if it gets to the point of a surgical airway. I mean, it's your whole backup system.
So it seems like this is similar to the conversation that we were having in December. I think at this point to move forward with this, maybe Rob, you can reach out to our QI people at the agency level and Marianne and Terry and see if we can get some data on times that this would have been a useful tool.
I think you're gonna have to discover
Yeah.
how you're going to figure that out, because, I mean, like, unsuccessful innovation attempts, and how are you going to weed out when you would have RSI'd somebody, because without actually reading through an entire chart, sometimes it's difficult to determine, yeah, this person sounded like they were appropriate for RSI.
Right?
you know.
Rick, what can you,
Just because someone's appropriate for RSI doesn't mean they should have gotten RSI. And I don't think it's possible to do a retrospective anything and get anything useful. Because the problem, the elephant in the room, from my perspective, is judgment. And that is 95% of this. Who needs RSI? Who doesn't need RSI? And then what are the tools that you have at your disposal when you're doing RSI, okay?
Including being able to do it correctly.
But I mean, what do you have when you're doing the RSI? Are you using, I haven't used a laryngoscope ever since I got a glide scope. You know, I still know how to use it, but most of the people in the field aren't gonna have a fiber optic. You can get portable fiber optic scopes, but most of them are gonna be using, I would think, laryngoscopes, which is fine, but it's just, it's always gonna be, it's the judgment is the big thing.
What about if we were to, looking forward over the next 6 months or so, set up a just prospective provider, if you feel like RSI would have been helpful in this case, please let us know, forward the chart to us for our review, and then we can compile a list of, are they right about that?
That makes a lot more sense.
Does that sound like a reasonable approach to
That makes a
this?
lot more sense.
It's gonna be right there.
I think it will, I think 6 months at a minimum to,
You know, in all
Collect that.
honesty, I don't think we're having people banging on the door saying, I need RSI and I need it today.
Yeah.
So I think taking some time and actually figuring out the best way to do this isn't gonna be harmful in any way.
Yeah, that kind of a look at it makes a lot more sense than trying to do something
well, I just think now we're just gonna be talking in circles without
Yes.
doing something, right? So, can you continue to spearhead that, Rob?
Sure. And the other thing too is, as he was mentioning, it is a revamping of our entire airway process. How, if we did ultimately decide to go in that route, how are we gonna get them training with the medications and things like that? Because I don't want their first time to ever see it or first time to ever experience be on the ambulance as they're about to try it on somebody.
Absolutely.
So we would have to reach out to them, like, I mean, the ERs, we don't probably do it often enough. Is anesthesia gonna be willing to help us? Are there any departments that we can send them to? So there's a lot to go into it as well.
I think we're gonna have to get Ross involved in that if you're gonna have people actually doing stuff in the hospital because they
Yeah.
believe they have to be associated with
That's-
they have to be
That is
associated with the class.
that is a contractual nightmare. I'm not saying it can't be done, but the amount of legal hoops to jump through is astounding.
But we've also run into with our paramedic program, we have trouble getting students
Correct.
getting intubations in the OR as is. So if we're saying that we need to have OR intubations as a requirement to allow people to RSI in the field, I think we just throw out this policy now because we're never gonna get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is.
We don't necessarily need more OR intubations, it's a matter of seeing the medications and familiarity with the medications.
Mhm.
If you're pushing something for the first time, I mean, it doesn't have to be in our OR or something, if they're spend time in the ER.
It could be a look over the shoulder too, as the provider passes the tube. I know that's sometimes what my students have to kind of, there's that give and go. Sometimes they just have to look over a shoulder, but.
Sounds like we can, well, curve a lot. Dr. O'Connor?
Is this something that, like a national airway management course? You know,
So,
I mean, I went from, years ago, and never doing RSI. I came back from that conference and I felt totally confident. I felt I was given the judgment of who to RSI, how to identify the airway, failed airway algorithms and everything. Yeah, and it came back. The airway course is awesome, of course. I went from totally unconfident doing RSI.
I'm coming,
To feeling
they have them
confident.
very frequently, but Rochester has them, Binghamton has them, so we can piggyback onto somebody else's
But
airway
I think,
course.
again, let's just try to get a sense going forward what our actual need would be.
Yeah.
All right, that was contentious issue number one. Contentious issue number two is the issue of part-time ALS. So for folks that weren't at the last meeting, to get you up to speed, it was brought to our attention that we have some agencies in our region that are currently BLS agencies, but some of their providers are ALS level providers, and those agencies feel like they could fill an unmet need in their communities if they were able to flex up to providing ALS level care at times that they had those providers available. Currently, the way our region is set up, we want people to be ALS all the time, or not at all. I've done a little bit of just reading through policies and protocols from other regions in the state. I can't find any region that says specifically you must be able to provide ALS calls on these days or not these days. The most that I can find is regions like ours that say if you're applying for an ALS level of care, you need to be able to provide, you need to be able to demonstrate that 70 or 80% of the time you will be able to meet that ALS level. Don, you look very puzzled and troubled by this.
Not puzzled and troubled, I'm just putting the history in order. The policy as it stands, actually, because I heard some rumors, I kind of sort of got attacked at my other job over this. Our policy always leaned in favor heavily of 24/7 advanced life support. However, there was an out in the policy to enter into an agreement with another agency to cover your area at times when you couldn't. Historically, under very previous administrations at the largest ALS provider in Stremac County, that was never possible because they just flat wouldn't do it. And I think in this day and age, from a more realistic, pragmatic aspect, I think it's more possible than it was. I grew up in an agency that had a number of critical care techs, and we very much wanted to do ALS for our area, and never could because we couldn't reach that agreement. So I'm not opposed to the idea of part-time advanced life support, but I think we need to be very careful because, as you said, regions are kind of variable. And if you look to the west of us, to the southwestern region, in particular Allegheny County, there are a number of small departments in Allegheny County that have one or two critical care techs or paramedics that pop up when they're available. And what that's done is it's actually weakened the larger ALS provider in the county to the point where they're barely able to stay afloat. And it's unfortunate. It's, you know, you need some sort of a regular response. And you've got to be careful not to destroy the existing system. So my question is, as we do this, and if we do this for the first agency, we need to be prepared for other agencies that may choose to want to follow suit. So if we come up with a plan to make it viable, even if another region hasn't already come up with a plan, we should take the time to do it right. I know that, in Livingston County, there are a number of ALS agencies that are part-time ALS agencies. But there's a requirement, I think, in that region that they cover such a percentage of their own calls. There's also, I think, a requirement that they status with the 911 center so that there's not a question about who might be responding at a certain point.
That's my only concern with part-time ALS agencies is what it does to response times and how confusing it gets for the 911 centers.
Yeah, I mean, in our world, it's programmed ahead of time, so I think that, if X agency is gonna provide ALS, they need to be committed to providing it, whatever, 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, 7 days a week. That would make things fairly seamless on our side of the house, because right now, obviously, it knows if it needs ALS, it sends AMR.
Right.
If X agency decided they were gonna provide their own,
when they want to dispatch it, AMR to that call.
And I think the big struggle is, it hurts an agency that's staffing, trying to figure out when they need to add extra staffing to cover the part-time agencies' downtimes, things like that. I have, so I guess first off, the mechanism's always been in place, even though it wasn't.
Right, I don't think that our policy as written precludes it.
Right. It
We just set the bar at 70%, and if we don't like 70%, we can set the bar elsewhere.
The status with 911 is gonna be addressed.
And that
It
is, yes.
important.
Yep.
With Donnie was mentioning Allegheny County, MTS is the majority of it. I was with, they're my agency, so I was there. In 911 dispatch, a job got toned out. The agency that responded said, we don't have ALS, so it got toned out a second time. It's like, they said they didn't have ALS, and then finally got toned out to MTS. So with 911 doesn't know your capabilities at the time, you have a chance of multiple tones before someone responds to a call. What Rick was saying increases call time and response time, so that's a big concern.
You know, or they dispatch both agencies simultaneously because they're not sure who's out.
That creates,
You know,
that creates more problems
Yeah.
and canceling people as well too, because how many times are you gonna get canceled before you say why?
Well, the other aspect you got too, for like us, if you give one of the volunteer corps in Stremac County ALS 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, that takes call volume away from one of the fly cars, which is also there for all the numerous small towns around that area. What's that gonna do to corporate looking at numbers saying, oh, that car lost a lot of calls, it's not making money, we now lose that fly car for all the other small towns? There's a lot of aspects you gotta look at
So,
in the ALS world.
and there's another larger issue there. Is this agency going to work strictly within their own district, which unless they apply for an expansion of territory, they're kind of hamstrung to do that. Obviously AMR's got the CON for ALS first response across that area. But certainly Bath can upgrade to advanced life support. They're not gonna be able to answer calls outside their district unless
And I
it's under
think
mutual.
the rumor, obviously it's all rumor mill, but they made it clear they're not leaving the town of Bath, village of Bath. And that's one of my big, if corporate says, well, 102's done, who's gonna cover Prattsburg, Paultney, Hammondsport, Wayne, Cameron, everywhere that 102 flies to, Canona. So I can see why that policy was put in play by past members of the Stremac Council that obviously owned my company years ago type. I know why that was put there. But it's gonna affect a lot of the ALS in the area, especially if, like you said, Donnie, the cost. Where's it gonna be? If we start losing a lot of call volume, corporate world, they're not gonna let fly cars sit around and not making money. And that's just me personally looking at how my corporation or any corporation out there is gonna look at it. How are you gonna keep a car up running, losing money on a monthly basis, I
Understood.
still personally, as a member of the county, or, resident of the county, more ALS is better. There's just gotta be a fine line to how we're gonna figure that out, so that the smaller towns that are counting on AMR still have that available. We can't just keep spreading my rigs out of the city, for example, to run all over the county type situation.
I think this is something to get the whole council involved to discuss would be helpful.
That'll probably be a separate meeting night, it'll be an all-night thing.
Well,
I guess at the end of the day, I'm not totally familiar with all the documentation here, but, if it doesn't prohibit it, at some point, if there's nothing in there prohibiting it, then I don't know how far, at some point you have to make a decision, I would say, and then
Currently, our policy says 70% of the time?
I believe,
I thought our policy was 24/7, 365.
but it's 70% of those calls have to be answered at an ALS level. To me, it was written when I read it.
Okay. The last version of the policy I remember was that if an agency couldn't cover 24/7, they had to enter into an agreement
Right.
with another ALS agency to cover when they were not available to.
And that's what I was told, so is there a different version of the policy?
Pull up our ALS operations policy.
It should be under the original permit or provisional permit application package.
That's what I was, when Al Lewis contacted me last week, because he finally heard the rumor. And he said, have you heard anything about this? And we brought up a Stremac in December, and the Strengths Council's talked about it. I'm like, we haven't moved on it, because the Stremac wants to look into things before they jump into decisions.
But there's politics
And
involved in this at the local and county.
Oh my God, there's.
Well, it's going to be, yeah. I was saying, Al said absolutely, the policy was 24/7, 365, and that's why I was put into play, so I've never heard the 70% call from anybody.
But realistically, I mean, we need to, at the end of the day, we need to take all the names out of it and protect the system as a whole.
Yes.
Mhm.
So while Mike is pulling up the policy so we can be clear on what we're talking about, I just want to pass around, one of the issues was the credentialing of base station physicians, that our policies now are very clearly laying out what we want people answering the radio to be able to do. There was a question at the last meeting as to whether PAs and NPs could answer the radio. Ross clarified with the state, and they can. So anybody who is a licensed healthcare provider that meets the requirements is able to answer the radio and provide medical control per the state. This is just a letter that I drafted to send to all of our regional hospitals saying anybody currently in the system is grandfathered in, but any new hires, including locums, have to meet the requirements outlined in our policy. And then I went through the protocol test and pulled out, there were 5 questions that seemed to pertain to online medical control. And I think that asking our new hire physicians and mid-levels to answer 5 questions to document that they at least looked at the protocol is not too onerous. So once that has had time to circulate, I'd love if we can move forward with that. And then the other thing that I'll pass around, we had discussed any physicians that are credentialed to provide medical control, that want to have little ID badges, they go out in the field and say, hey, I'm approved by Strems to provide medical control. Rick did up a little badge, excuse my bad hair day in this, but this was the mock-up of what he thought would look good, and I think it looks pretty good, again, other than my picture.
The picture of it.
Should put someone else's picture on there,
Right.
see if anybody notices. You know.
So, 2017-08, you guys have approved that?
Yes, we approved all the policies at our December meeting.
Okay. Can you pass those up through the full council?
They are on the website,
Okay.
on Strems Council.
Yeah, I think actually the council needed to weigh in on it as well.
I thought that we were independent enough that,
It's typically a rubber stamp deal,
Okay.
but, yeah. Plus at least everybody down will be aware of the updates. Ooh, that is a bad hair day.
I'm sorry, Donnie, I thought that we had discussed that at our last Strems Council meeting, we had approved all of our policies.
I don't remember approving.
They did.
Oh, we did.
I think they did, Tommy. They did.
Oh, I stand corrected.
I wasn't gonna correct you in the middle of the
Well,
meeting.
when you work a night shift, it's,
Understandable. Oh, were there more? Oh, well then pass them all
so
around.
good then.
Hooray!
I like the question mark right after. It's simple, did you read it or not?
Thank you.
He certainly was contentious.
Oh, I'm good. I read it already.
One's gonna go for pizza, right? So we can get a lot more.
Not listening.
What do you need?
Cause our chief's meeting goes to
Oh, yeah, he's got something. Just like you do. So like, how are we gonna police this, this is being done with the locums, for example?
I mean, other than strongly worded letters, I think the thing is that if our providers are doing the right thing and writing down the name of the medical control physician they spoke to on the phone, and if that is not somebody who is approved, that needs to be brought back to the hospital ASAP.
So will the locums take the test online and then we'll have his name that he's completed it automatically online, or does the
The hospital
Or is the
will have
ED
to,
director will
the
have
ED
to-
director of the
will have
hospital will have
to
to
say that he passed
say
it?
that you passed it and attest to him being on their list.
What should, the easiest way is to make it part of the credential.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But again, that the onus is on the hospitals to keep their records up to date.
Just like your infection controls.
Right? Right.
There's that-
How to wash your hands and how to talk on the radio.
That's $20 an hour of your life you never get back every 2 years.
So I would like to proceed with sending out that letter and that 5-question test. If that is all right with the group. I think I need a motion to do so though.
Sure. Do you think that they should also sign saying that they have those
I think that's a fantastic idea.
so that they, not just that they do the test, but that they have at least read the protocols and understand.
I think that's
That
great.
way,
Yeah.
something comes back, we will have.
So what basically we need to submit a list of everybody that's here now,
Everybody that's here now,
and then going forward.
Yep.
Okay.
does that sound like a reasonable way to go about it?
Would the hospital then be responsible, say, every 6 months, just giving us an update for people that were removed and added annual?
Maybe in the letter we could include just a statement saying where they can find the protocols?
Absolutely.
Yeah, or where they can find them, so. I guess it's an open book test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, Diane and I were talking, there's actually something in Article 28 and also a Bureau of EMS policy statement on base station physicians. I don't know
Provider maybe.
if that needs to be, or a base station provider, if that needs to be referenced in your letter.
Sure.
Actually saying that there's actually.
In conjunction with Article 28 and our regional policy.
Yeah, it's not a regional policy, it's a state policy, it's a Bureau of EMS policy. They actually have a policy about base station providers. I don't know if that needs to be referenced in this, it's just saying that this isn't just the region doing this, this is coming out of public health law.
Sure.
I'll have to dig to find the exact law, but it's in Article 28, I think it's 405 or 419 or something.
Any other thoughts on this? We like the 5 questions? Can I move ahead with it?
Let's go.
I hear a motion in a second. All opposed? All in favor? All right, good. Caught it. And how about the ID cards? Mark had wanted more of the tin star type of badge, but this is along the lines of what our EMS providers are using, so seemed most appropriate to me.
Everybody save your Coke cans and I'll cut a couple out.
Buy the plastic and stay sharp.
So Rick, I think you said that if people want these badges, they can just send you a picture and their license number and,
Send a picture, yep, send a picture and then how they want their name on their ID card and I will make it. So,
all right?
if they want one.
So that is open should you want it. Thanks, Rick. We had talked last time with the changes in reimbursement for transfers and having to now shop around before transporting people, and that there were some delays. People continue to experience delays in transferring people out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's really
What, if anything, can we do to remedy that situation?
I think communication needs to be improved, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I honestly gotta believe that it's, you know, the earlier that you can notify that you potentially have something going on with the ambulance service, allows them to prepare. The earlier that the required paperwork can be completed, makes it that much quicker when you're ready to have an ambulance go that it goes. But always have to remember, and I'm speaking just for my agency, but I'm sure Dan will agree with me, is that you say that one magic word, that this is an emergency, then all bets are off and and the next available ambulance is sent to you. Because just like your transfer is just like a 911 call then, but it still has to be triaged. It still has to be triaged to, do I take the person with the shortness of breath that is fairly short of breath, but needs a pulmonary consult on the rubber packer, or do I take care of the acute chest pain that's going on in the community? Which comes first?
Yeah.
So it still has to go through a triage process, but obviously the earlier that we're notified, the earlier the paperwork's done, and if you guys can get Medicaid to stop doing what Medicaid's doing, we will.
Yeah, Medicaid's the biggest issue.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we will have whatever booze you want at the next annual treatment meeting. But I mean, for us, I mean, it's literally, it's every time, it's the little games that they play. Transfers that they call in that the hospital already notified us about that we know is a ALS patient with drips running and on a cardiac monitor, and MAS calls and says, well, this is a BLS run. And we say, no, it's not ALS. And they go, well, we have to call back to the hospital to confirm that. And then if it is ALS, then I have to get a supervisory override to change it to ALS. So that adds, it's the games that they're playing, and that's all, it's a money-saving game but I believe MAS is a contractor to the state, so it's, you know, I mean, they were contracted by the state to save money, and these are the games that they play to do that. And
It becomes a double-edged sword, though.
It absolutely does.
In a lot of ways, they haven't made ambulances money as well, because you don't have to fight over reimbursements for, especially the more questionable transports.
Oh, no, there's a ton of times that there's no medical necessity, but because Medicaid gave you a pre-op, we're paying for it. And it's wrong. If there's no medical necessity, they shouldn't be given a pre-op.
Well, but that's their choice.
No, I know,
It's
I'm
the
just
only-
saying,
You know, it's the
that's
only
Medicaid.
transportation they can
They're
find.
costing the state a lot of money in that aspect.
But I think I agree with Rick about communication, because this is not a new problem by any stretch. 10, 12 years ago, at the agency I worked at, interfacility transports made up about 15% of our call volume. And by the time I left there, they were pushing 25% of our call volume. The advent of critical access hospital designation has not helped, because I know the hospitals are under time constraints to make a decision and either admit or transfer. The unfortunate part is your decision to admit or transfer doesn't necessarily mesh with the resources that are available in the field at that given time. And Rick's right. I mean, sometimes we got a triage. You got a patient that's sitting in an ER. You get that the ER needs the bed, and I get that the patient needs to go. But at the same time, if the ambulances are busy in the community 911 calls. It kinda is what it is. But there's room to improve on both sides of the fence. If an ambulance can get in and out of an ER in less than 30 minutes with a patient going on transfer, that's a good deal. That doesn't typically happen because quite frequently the paperwork's not correct, pieces of paperwork are missing, you need to clarify transfer orders, and especially with like traveler nurses that come through. The experienced nurses in the ER dump these transfer patients off on the travelers, and they have no clue what paperwork's required. No clue that we need a properly filled out PCS, you know, that we need transfer orders. So I think there's room on both sides
Fair enough.
to tighten that up. If, you know, if you wanna get patients moving faster, if we could figure out how to get the hospital's portion of paperwork and the patient transfer, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into an ER and expected to pick up the patient, grab my stuff and go, and I'm like, yeah, the patient, we forgot we need to administer this, you know, it's gonna be 10 minutes or so, or the patient's down in the bathroom, or the patient hasn't had lunch yet.
But it sounds like from what, Rick, what you were saying, that if early on, the physician gets on the phone and says, this patient really needs to go now for medical reasons, you guys will have an efforts to make it happen.
And I wanna clarify this by saying that, you know, if you say it's an emergency, we're gonna send an ambulance. The next available ambulance is coming your way because we wanna treat that emergency. But it can't be Peter and the Wolf either.
Right.
You know, it has to actually turn out to be an actual emergency.
Yes.
And, because two things are gonna happen. And one thing is that the ambulance service is not gonna get paid because either Medicare or Medicaid is gonna retrospectively look at that and say, we're not paying you because you should have gotten pre-authorization. Doesn't matter what the hospital told you, you should recognize that and got pre-authorization as soon as you realize that. And the other thing is then you're gonna start getting, well, is that really an emergency, you know?
Yep.
Do I need to send someone right over right now?
Oh, yeah.
Type of reaction, and I don't ever want that.
That's how they get you to turn the wheel up. I mean, there'd be days we have 8 transfers coming out of Corning Hospital, and the floors are telling us, well, it's an emergency. Well, no, what's in the ER is an emergency. That needs to go first, and then I'll get nursing supervisors, you guys need to triage this stuff together, figure out what transfers you want to go out of your hospital first.
Yeah, I guess I just spitballing here is maybe there should be a physician that's kind of, that triages what patients need to go first. And who is that physician that triages that? Is that the ER attending, or is it, you know, the hospitalist? And don't shoot me for saying that, but, you know, who is the physician that, if there's 4 transfers coming out of Arnold Ogden and everybody wants to go right now, who's the physician that actually triages and says, well, this one goes first, and this one, and then this one?
Yeah.
And
With us, it's ER physician, I imagine it's the same
Same
department. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and that's been like, a couple times we've called the nursing supervisor, we don't know about the patient, I'm
Right.
saying, so we find out the information from the nursing supervisor, and we say, well, you know, and we work it out between them, saying, listen, our kid needs to go first, you know, or whatever,
Right.
Rochester.
We bump people intentionally to get someone from the ER out to Rochester faster.
We've, years ago, when we started having this problem at Schuyler, we actually created EMD codes to triage transfers. And we looked at the high acuity transfers, the patients that were going from the ER to an ICU at another facility, patients that were going to the cath lab, stroke patients, and issued those high acuities. And when we contracted with the hospital, we guaranteed them an ambulance within 20 minutes of their time of call. As long as it was one of those, as long as it was triaged into one of the high acuity codes. The others would guarantee to an answer in an hour. So we put, from the ambulance perspective, we put ourselves in a position where we knew we had to give the hospital something.
Sure.
In exchange, and it worked fairly well for us. I think you were there for some of that, Dr. Sheriff.
I don't remember. But it sounds like a great idea, it makes sense.
Dr. Click actually helped us develop it, and so we coded them 33s, following the EMV coding, and then 1 through 6. And
Bless you.
like I said, the high acuity ones, the ambulances agreed that, you know, they get you an answer within so many minutes. The low acuity trips, the hospitals agreed to extend us a longer time period for them. So, you know, however you choose to do it, I think triage is the right direction to be going in.
Certainly sounds reasonable, but maybe something that at least individual hospitals should be doing on their own before we try to bring the boot down from the region. All right, QI, Marianne and Terry are hard at work on QI, and I look forward to an update from them at our next meeting. PAD, any updates?
Yep. We've gone through the entire file now. There's 151 organizations that hold a PAD. There's a total of 501 AEDs out there. At this time, we have 23 that are compliant, meaning their paperwork is up to date, signed off, and on file. 5 of the AEDs have been discontinued. We've made contact with 118 of them. Still trying to make contact with a bunch of the others. We're getting some no response, some pushback. I think one of the reasons I've spoken with Ross about some of the pushback. As everybody's aware, there really isn't any teeth in any of this. But it does say when they signed on the original agreements that they would renew these packets every 2 years. And it's just, one of the reasons that we really want to do this, particularly we started with Chemung County, is when we get their completed, updated information, we're trying to get the exact locations, and we've worked with Mark Sikora at 911, and they're going to populate the address with the exact location of the AED. And we're looking to do that in the other 2 counties as well. So this is important for a number of reasons. Number one, they agreed to do it. Number two, it's going to assist 911. And looking across our partners, all the program agencies, the only teeth that anybody's been able to put into it is west of us. One of the REMACs has left it up to the medical directors to require them. And you know, a doctor signs off on these as well. So it's sort of interesting that a doctor's signing off on this and it's letting it lapse and it's still under his purview. So it's kind of something for discussion. Obviously, we're not looking for anything right now, but something to think about that you might want to put out to the doctors that are signing off on these things.
Who we may or may not have an up-to-date list of who they are.
Correct.
Some of these actors may not even live.
We haven't come across any dead ones yet. A couple of strokes, but no dead.
There was a while when Red Cross had a doctor from out in the Midwest. And we actually had to research and find out if he actually had a license to practice in New York, which he did.
There are several who are getting out of a sort of, they have like a maintenance contract with a doctor in Alabama. And we're just in the process, we've come across it numerous times, so we're in the process of researching to see if that's actually valid. And Ross has actually, been assisting us with this, because he's gonna, I think at some point, he may send some letters. Sort of passive, but kind of, they're not recognizing the importance of this.
I think on Health Commerce, you can look up doctors for licensure.
You can just go on the DOH's website and have a physician profile.
Yep.
So, it's really not that difficult to find.
There's a simple website, anyone can check if they're licensed in any specialty.
We'll follow through on that.
Terrific.
Tells you
Did
exactly
you
what want
get a chance to pull up our ALS operating
I'll
policy?
find it.
Okay.
We'll research it.
Okay.
Get it out to everybody.
Great.
Did you look council website?
On their website?
On the council website? It may be there.
Karen, you want
We don't have access to that, you have to be able to log in to do that.
Oh,
What, no, you should be able to just get on the website, there's a whole page with forms.
Mm-hmm. You don't need anything signed to do that.
Yeah, the member, they shouldn't be on the members only page.
The
Nothing
forms
secret
goes
there.
back to our page. I'll go check.
Under the Stremac section of the website, all the Stremac policies are there and open access. Brandon, paramedic program, almost done.
Yes, so less than a month left, so if you see my students running around looking, possessed, that's why. Because every year people wait till last minute. But so in about 2 weeks, we have our practical exams, both New York State and National Registry. We've actually separated them out this year to make it easier for everybody. And then they test in Rochester on the 15th. So, and then our new application just went out yesterday for our upcoming program, which will start in the last Wednesday of April. That's the 25th. So we'll probably start rolling out advertisements next week. So,
Fantastic.
yeah,
20 people are we graduating?
Yes, yeah, 20 presently. 20 will get there, who knows about, passing, but 20 we'll get there.
Will all of those 20 be gainfully employed in our region upon?
If they're not, they didn't look. That's the way, because people call a lot and they say, what's the placement ratio in EMS for paramedics? I said, if you don't have a job, it's your own fault. I mean, that's the crux of it. It's 100% employable if you've submitted a resume, something.
Excellent.
You got a
Yes.
place, you're in.
But yes, right now, 20 of mine are actually employed, so they will just probably jump up a level.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the other things on our agenda, the large vessel occlusions. I had scheduled a call-in from a couple folks up in Rochester, but then we got rescheduled. So we'll have to have them come talk to us some other time. Essentially, Rochester, on the basis of a couple of recent trials, is looking to really aggressively push their treatment of strokes with large vessel occlusions and to facilitate rapid endovascular therapy. And what they are interested in exploring with us is some kind of regional policy where people who are identified in the field as having likely LVOs would be sent straight to Rochester.
From the scene,
From the scene, by helicopter.
by helicopter?
Rick, you changed your tune.
So,
That's very funny.
certainly the concern, I spoke with them briefly on the phone, and the concerns that I had were, one, this would have to be an incredibly specific policy. We're not looking to catch all LVOs, we're looking to, at best catch the definite LVOs and try not to take anybody who would have benefited from early TPA out of our system for a delay. And I also think that they didn't quite understand how long it would take to get a helicopter to the patient and then to Rochester. They were telling me that they thought it would take only 12 to 20 more minutes on the patient's transport time, which did not seem quite right to me. So,
It also takes into account making sure we can fly every
Yes.
single day.
Right, whatever.
Yeah.
so, thank you.
Sounds very optimistic on that for their part, especially because I flew free to Rochester in a 2-day span, all for this large vessel occlusion. And getting in touch with the interventionalist took over an hour each single time.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
They'd already all been
Seems like
TPA'd, everything else.
I had somebody yesterday that I was surprised at how long it took to get somebody on the phone, because I've had, in the past, I've been really good.
Yeah.
Oh, really good. It's like, I don't know what happened, but yesterday it didn't work.
So, I think that they are retooling things and then want to get back in touch with us about whether or not this is something that we would want to be on board with. The other piece piece of it that they are looking into is facilitating more rapid transfers from the hospital. So if somebody hits the door of one of our facilities and we think they have an LVO, starting the transfer process at that time, getting a CT and a CTA done right away, and then discussing with somebody up there whether or not the patient should go.
That makes a lot-
Which
that
I think
makes
is
a lot more
probably a
sense.
better play for
Yes.
most of our regions.
That makes a lot more sense. The whole thing with health, I mean, you know, if the hospitals in question were closer to the tertiary center, that makes a lot of sense. Bypassing the primary center, because
Right.
it's only 10 more minutes, do it.
Right.
But not out here.
No, I think that they did not quite understand the reality behind everything. But so,
Aren't you
hopefully-
getting one of those $1.5 million stroke buses?
No.
That answer.
No, I'm serious, they're putting one on the road now. Their,
Yeah.
their idea, as they're concerned,
It's a
is saying goes out
CT bus.
to do a CT.
Well, it's funny because what you guys are talking about, the comment was made like a week and a half ago, that don't be so shocked when Strong takes over your region for strokes. I had no clue what that comment meant until now, so.
well, that's what that comment.
No, I mean, they have a great program,
Mhm.
and it's something that the area where we can improve, especially because we're all primary centers, are the people that, I mean, you know, they come in, and, I mean, the way we do it is if your score is 6 or more, you're getting a CTA, and you're getting TPA if you're eligible, and then, you know, then we
Yeah.
possibly involve Rochester.
Well, I think that their thought is getting those wheels turning before that decision is made would be advantageous. But I think we're also talking about a fairly small volume of patients who actually would wind up falling into the needs endovascular therapy category. But anyway, I'll try to get them to talk
Well,
about
it's
starting this
getting,
meeting.
but it's getting, you know, the bigger thing that they didn't talk about though, is the, you know, the people who now, with the 24-hour window and the penumbra, that, you know, that's the bigger opportunity, I think.
Good point.
Yeah.
Mike and Donnie, we got a thing recently about what was our policy on transfusions by EMS, which we have no policy for, and I don't know that we need a
Well,
policy
I don't
for.
know, well, because the way I understood the updated blood transfusion regulations, there wasn't a necessity for the region to implement policy. Agencies who wish to become transfusion agencies needed to file a notice of intent with the Department of Health and include their policies in their contract with the local blood bank. So I was a little baffled by that email request because that's, that process wasn't meant to be a regional process. That was meant to be a,
Is that a Jones request?
Dan Clayton, same thing,
Okay.
except without the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we need a regional transfusion policy. Does anybody sitting at this table feel differently about that?
The issue with the regional transfusion policy is each individual hospital and their blood bank is really responsible for their own staff. And I kind of ran into this as I tried to help put together an ambulance transfusion service program for another agency. You know what, if a local hospital blood bank doesn't want to play with you, so be it. And, you know, those people are incredibly difficult to deal with. But that's something that's best done between the hospital that has the blood bank and the agency.
Okay, good.
So,
So we're all on the same page with this.
I mean, it'd just be double regulation.
yeah.
Mike, the PCR use policy process,
Similar to the PAD thing, what we're looking into is BLS, FRs, doing PCRs and compliance with that. They are not required to, however, it's strongly encouraged. And there's been much discussion back and forth, and the short course on this is, there's a lot of wisdom in getting a PCR, if nothing else in legal matters. And I cited an example just last week, an agency called and wanted their PCR, except they never filed a PCR. And besides, ours is all redacted anyway. But they're constantly requesting that sort of information. The other wisdom, this is of course, it feeds into the data bank, and that's how you get stats, and that's how you get things done, by a good data bank. The downside is, the fear is that if they're required to do one more piece of paper, they're gonna stop providing BLS, stop providing service. What's happening in some other agencies, particularly out west, I spoke with Ed Major, who's the manager for, he's Ross's counterpart in the west. There was discussion at REMAC, to have a policy from them requiring their agencies. It really didn't get much traction, although it's still out there. Dr. Walters, who has one of the pieces in that area, he is going to require his agencies to do PCRs. So this kind of speaks to what's your appetite for any kind of action. Just leave it go, or would you like to see PCRs from everybody?
How much can we force BLS-only agencies to do this?
You can, according to Ed and to the.
But there's no regulatory authority.
No, but the doctors can require them to. It's under their purview.
It would be their medical directors.
Correct.
Yeah, the REMAC themselves cannot, but their individual medical directors can.
Correct.
Ed identified that the REMAC can require that.
You don't even need a medical director to be a first response agency. If you choose not to do EpiPens and AEDs, there are agencies out there that don't have medical directors at all. While I think personally that PCRs are good business practice for anybody that's out delivering care, the fact is, there's no regulatory authority to force BLS first response agencies to do a New York State pre-hospital care report.
Right. And that's why they're shifting the focus to asking the doctors, particularly the ones who are signing off again for the agencies, to speak up.
Which is why it's not a REMAC thing, it's an agency medical director.
And this isn't end run by the state, in my opinion. I mean, if the state was really interested in everybody producing PCRs, they would take their bridge and they would turn on the PCR program for it and offer it free to everybody. It's the state trying to get something done without having to go through the regulatory process to get it done.
Right, it's more that it's here, but you interpret, there's no teeth in anything, and, voluntary participation, and of course, there's no funding mechanism for any of them.
The best we can do is encourage agencies to use some kind of patient care reporting system.
I agree that that's ideal, but if we have no regulatory authority over these people, I think that it doesn't behoove us much to try to regulate them.
I think the best thing that this body could do would be to send out a advisory saying that you strongly suggest for your own protection that you produce a written report of every patient contact.
I think
I would think that is the best that this body could do.
PCR, so that they'll have it right then and there. Right?
Interestingly, most of them have the PCRs.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, because we're required by the state to track everyone that we give out, and everyone we get back, and Karen can speak to the volumes that we get. It's sort of, they come in and pick up hundreds of them, and on occasion, we get a couple of them back, and they're certainly transported. One of the other plus sides.
Well, they're not transporting though. BLS first response agencies by nature typically are not transporting.
but they're participating in the transport, so they're handing off a scrap of paper, which is problematic. And actually, they wanted us to produce more scraps of paper for them, so they could write this down and hand it to somebody. And we graciously declined to do that.
The cheat sheets.
Yes, yes. You know, we're looking for more formal documentation, and when they hand off to, say, Airways or whatever,
Well,
it should be something more legitimate.
and the reason the short forms, or the cheat sheets, as you call them, came into existence is because it takes some people a painfully long time to fill out a paper PCR, especially when they're in a first response role, and they're there for maybe 10 minutes before the ambulance, the transporting agency arrives. And the transporting agency is not going to sit around and wait for the BLS provider to complete a PCR before they take the patient to the hospital. The short forms were designed to contain the required demographic information, the information that would be pertinent to the treatment of the patient, as opposed to being a data collection tool. I think that it's probably a mistake to not continue to offer the short form, because the short forms are what they can fill out in a couple of minutes and put with the patient as they're going to the ambulance, not a complete PCR.
We're providing that for them, but they have to print it themselves because it's an unfunded sort of thing. I mean, they can, the form is still there and it's gonna be on our website. If they wanna print them off and that's what they wanna use, they can use that. But what we're looking for them is to also give good information to the transporting agency. You know, there's some out there who do this on every call, and there's some that don't do it at all. And if it's the same or similar situation, you know, their pushback is exclusively, I don't want to do any more paperwork.
I think we can all relate to that.
Absolutely. Well, I think that it's very reasonable, as was suggested, for us to send out a little, hey guys, you should do this for yourself and for your patients.
And on top of that, I think it's inappropriate for an agency to be coming here and requesting a PCR. They're obligated to keep those on file for 7 years. That's their responsibility, not the program agencies. And maybe agencies need to be reminded that they have an obligation to.
Mike, I
take
think-
the paperwork.
I think some of the confusion, I was part of a first response agency with my fire department. We just suspended the EMS agency code about 6 months ago due to lack of volunteers, because most of us work for AMR and don't go to the fire department. We were actually told when we started the East Campbell First Response Agency, we didn't need to do PCRs. Bob actually said if you give oxygen or any type of drug or assist the patient, you should probably do a PCR to cover your own butt. But we were told flat out we didn't need to do a PCR.
That's correct.
And it might be beneficial that, hey, like you guys said, send out a letter recommending that they do, because it's been 04 till now. I've might have wrote 4 PCRs total for that fire department. And that's just because I knew better. It could go to court type situation, and I'm writing a PCR on paper. But there might be the confusion out there with these first responder spots, because we're told flat, we don't need to do them. It's a waste of paper, waste of our time.
And
So if I were to send out a letter on behalf of Stremac saying, you really should do this, is that all right with everybody? With a sample?
I think that's a good idea. Is there a way to tell them why we want this, what the benefits are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because,
Karen's put together a little sheet on the wisdom of doing this, and we'll send that over to you
It's
to
even better than me trying to do it myself.
Well, there's also the possibility that a lot of these fire department first responder agencies are doing charting, but they're doing it through their firehouse software. Which is
We put all our instances in the OFPC,
Did you find
EMS
the
or whatever, but
policy in there?
Yes, I sent it
it
over.
was 80%.
80%?
Wait a minute, I missed that.
I find it useful to have them, the BLS ones, when they're legible. A lot of times, it might just be a copy and you can't read them, but when they're there, because how many times it's, you know, especially codes, if they bring them in and you ask the paramedic, was there CPR being done by the family, you know, and they say, well, we don't know, by the time we got there, the fire department was there and they were doing CPR, you know, so you lose that information, what happened before they get there, it's really
Which
important.
is what we're trying to capture, is everything they did,
Yeah.
and whether or not they handed it on properly to the transport agency. We're trying to capture that information, and they should want to be capturing that for themselves, and which is where we're getting those phone calls. And, you know, just to reiterate for everybody, the stuff that we house is redacted. You know, if you tell me I do, you know, Billy Bob's PCR, I'm no help. You know, Donnie's correct. They're supposed to archive that in their facility.
And that's actually part of the first response application package, is an explanation of how your records are going to be maintained and secured.
I will send a letter of encouragement. I think we're finally at the end of the agenda. We've been here for an hour and a quarter now. Please make sure that you sign in and that you fill out the this. And yes,
I
sir,
have a question.
please.
So, one, a physician on staff at Quincy Hospital participates as a volunteer fireman. And I think I handled this already once before, but they asked this question again. What is, when I'm on a call, our fire department goes out as a first responder. As a physician, what is my responsibility? Because this person is saying, you know, when sometimes they get on scene, and when the EMS agency gets, when the ALS agency gets there, they like just go, we don't want to do with you, you're not our medical control. So that was their question. What is my responsibility?
Well, with that little ID card, he is the medical control.
Well, only if he chooses to.
Right, so I think that is part of it, is that if the physician wants to exercise their authority.
Well,
as
this
a
is not
physician.
somebody that has a hospital practice. Okay, they're not an ER physician.
Oh, okay.
They're not an ER physician. So they are just a physician in the community.
I don't think you can practice any higher than what the level of your agency's
What
at.
I said, what the way I answered, I said I would bring it up at this meeting and ask what people thought. I said, until the ALS agency gets there, I think you're practicing basically as a good Samaritan.
Well, if it's an EMT squad, for example.
And then once ALS gets there, you're out of the loop.
The next question is, that I have, is does he have any EMS certification? Or is
ACLS.
no, but is he in CFR, EMT, advanced EMT,
No.
or paramedic?
So,
No, they're just a physician who
Right.
rides on the
so to draw on some personal experience,
Well, that would make it much easier, because then he's only allowed to practice at a certified level.
But then again, he or she is also
I'm not
physician
sure that
licensed
that's-
in the state.
True though, right?
This is somebody that wants to,
Yeah,
this person wants to help.
Is this an emergency physician?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
so to break it down, we had a physician at Schuyler Hospital, for years, who was a first responder with one of the fire departments up there. He was always very clear. As he responds as a member of that department, as part of their organized response, he can only operate to the level of care that the agency is certified for. So his role was a first responder. So if he shows up, comes across an accident, is on a scene, absolutely good Samaritan law, the whole 9 yards there. With regard to advanced life support, again, you all got a policy for physician on scene.
Already, yeah.
But if he's part of the organized response with the fire department, he would work to the level that the fire department is certified at.
I think that it's perhaps a little stickier than that, because as a physician responding, you're not a good Samaritan. You are covered by different covering physician law in New York State.
But only if you're gonna give the patient a bill, correct?
No,
I don't think so. I think that
no, it's,
if you're negligent
Morally
and
unethical.
you're a physician, clearly negligent.
Well, apparently that's a lot of
Something
confusion in this region, again, you just brought up. Because I've always been told RNs can't practice on an ambulance at their level because they're RNs. Physicians can't get on an ambulance and practice as a physician because they're not an ALS tech. So there's a lot of confusion even in the 6 years that I've been in.
And I think that this is a question that has to go to a lawyer to answer, because it really is a question of the liability of that physician in that environment, and
Talk to the Department of Health, I'm certain that this is covered somewhere in either Article 32. It's either in Article 30 or Article 32, and it's covered in there somewhere.
And I mean, pre-hospital providers, according to Article 30, there's 4 levels. EMR, EMT, AEMT, and paramedic. Pennsylvania's a lot more convoluted because you can be a pre-hospital medical doctor in PA or a pre-hospital RN.
but I guess that what I'm saying is that, again, I think we should clarify that with the state, if you can reach out to Ross and get some clarification, but a physician practicing pre-hospitally is still a physician in New York State that falls under the physician rules, I would suspect.
I don't disagree with you, but I really honestly somewhere believe that I've seen this somewhere before in regulation where they talk about physicians practicing for an EMS agency and what, and it's actually spelled out in public health law, not in policy, in public health law, so.
Well, if you could,
Get that information,
Well,
great.
to me, because I told them, and they had the same question about like, this person, when they volunteered for like a race to participate as, the ALS people, they're trying to help these people out as a volunteer, and the ALS people like take over and kind of just shove them out of the way. And I'm like, well, I think that's because they're under medical control, and you don't have any authority over them, and they're responding to the
If that is a complaint, I need to know about that, for example. Because honestly, like Wine Glass Marathon,
right.
they contract with us.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying us an additional fee or whatever
Yeah.
to send rigs specifically for that rig.
No, I know, but
So we're
there's
there
also people
working
volunteer.
under,
There's also
you know,
people,
like Dr. Enders or Dr. Hallahan.
right.
Them people, they have a right to tell our guys what to do. We're not really working for the Wine Glass, but they're paying to make sure our rigs stay there for the race, and we don't pull them from the race course.
It's committed service.
So I mean, there are kind of 3 different scenarios here, right? There is the physician working for some kind of pre-hospital agency, fire or
Well,
EMS,
volunteering for it.
Or volunteer.
Yeah, volunteer.
as a part of an organized
Yes.
pre-hospital response.
Yeah.
There is the physician staffing an event that is also working with a pre-hospital agency. And then there's the Good Samaritan physician on scene who has no responsibility apart from the fact that they came upon somebody and want to help them. And some of that is covered in our regional policy. It sounds like some of that is covered in New York public health law. And I hope that Ross would be able to elucidate for us better where those lines
That
are.
would be very helpful. I would appreciate it.
I think though, most physicians know, or they understand, at least help me out, other paramedics in the room, they want to help where they can. We've had that a lot. Hey, how can I help? I'm a physician. Oh yeah, can you help us do this or that? And they kind of know their endpoint of where they should be jumping in on what I can do. It tends to be more BLS stuff. Hey, can I help you guys ventilate? Can I help you do this? Or, sure, of course, I think it's probably rare to have the physician who wants to jump in and can I intubate and do this and that.
It's no different
Yeah,
as us as a paramedic.
it's
and we're
very rare.
Driving down to Myrtle Beach, on an accident,
Right.
and we're off duty, and the agency shows up. We're functioning, even though we're paramedic. Hey, what can we do to help?
Yeah, what can
It's a
I
collaborative
do? Can I lend a hand?
Can I lend you a hand?
And that's what normally, can you help? It's where they start telling and ordering
So,
the crew around on scene or something.
so the other.
That's
day-
actually easy because then I could say you need to speak with my medical control physician.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, 'cause
Because
there's
ultimately,
procedures and orders.
any medic is getting their control off their base physician, not off of the physician, and if there's ever that's a question that comes up.
Sure, and that's.
My students get presented
That's
that
what's
question all
addressed
the
in our
time.
regional policies.
Right.
But again, physician as part of an organized response may have different liability and responsibility.
And I think
And I
it's
think
been
that we-
addressed in
I
public
think that
health
we
law.
just need to know what that answer
Okay.
is. Yeah, the answer to your question.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, can we put that on the agenda for the next meeting so we can answer this? Because I
Yes.
think it's a great question and could potentially affect anybody in this room.
I do have one thing, Dr. Keller.
Sir?
Looking for guidance, got a phone call from the director of the ER at St. Joe's. Pretty much chewing my butt for my crews transporting psychiatric patients to their ER, stating that that hospital is not the closest appropriate psychiatric emergency room type situation. I've always been taught 6 years in EMS that they are.
I was working in the ER that day. I was actually the ER physician covering. That patient was an overdose of a whole bunch of medications with.
I'm not did that in one incident, but he had multiple.
So they're not a 9-3, St. Joe's is not a 939 receiving facility.
Right.
We do have a BSU at the facility, so it's a little better to get certain patients
They're not
out.
a 939 receiving
Yeah, we've always been
because
taught
I just
939.
spoke with the county commissioner of mental health and he told me that St.
So the
Joe's-
939, they can't accept transfers from other facilities just for a psych eval. So that's
The ER
The
cannot.
ER cannot.
The BSU
The
can.
BSU can. The BSU can take transfers from other facilities,
Right.
but you can't transfer somebody from your emergency room to St. Joe's ER just for a psych eval.
And we talked about this morning.
We're talking about picking up a psychiatric patient at home.
Off the street.
From off the street and transporting that patient to St. Joe's because I've always been taught that's the closest appropriate.
Yeah.
Because of the BSU upstairs.
Well,
Now I'm being told, do not do it
well,
by St. Joe's.
the reason St. Joe's is going that route is because a lot of them end up medically admitted before they ever end up going to the BSU. And St. Joe's, the mixed medical unit at this point, is a glorified urgent care. They can't take anything there that's any kind of respiratory problems. They can't take any kind of real telemetry issues. And the day that I worked, one of the patients that was brought in, they said was clearly psych, had a potassium of 1.4. And another one and was in alcohol withdrawal and severe enough that had to be transferred to.
We've had very good luck calling in we use the Unified Medical Control in Chemung County, so all our medical control comes out of one place, which is the.
I was wondering, because
Is out of the RNet, and we've had very good luck of explaining the situation and what's going on with the patient, and the physician will say, no, it's a potential for an overdose.
so pretty much we
Bring that patient.
We need to take everything to the closest hospital we have in Stremac County. Quit going to St. Joe's. 'Cause-
So if you think the patient is appropriate for St. Joe's, call.
Well, I mean, like the one patient that you're talking about with respiratory issues that day.
Yeah.
She's a known person, but we pick her up all the time.
Yeah. She's known to St.
The
Joe's.
whole story was not, she didn't even take any drugs. Well,
Yeah, she did.
Not on the crew, with the crew, went to,
No, yeah.
at her house, none of that. So it was told, she was just nuts that she needed help and wanted to go to St. Joe's. So they took her to St. Joe's, and then I got the phone call that she supposedly took all this medication,
Well,
possible overdose.
the crew called me on the phone and said that they were diverted from the Corning area to us.
It's what started the whole thing, because
Yeah.
they never even talked to Corning Hospital.
Yeah, so that was the whole problem and the
Yeah.
whole mess up with that. But the story they gave me is a patient took an overdose of 3 different medications and an unknown amount of each one. That's what the crew called and told me on the phone. I said, it sounds
So
like
that's not even what the crew reported.
it sounds like it may be more advanced than this facility medically can handle. I'm like, but if you think the patient needs to be evaluated, you're more than welcome to come here.
Yeah.
So I didn't try to refuse them or anything. I said that they might have further than what we can handle if they wanted to discuss it with Arnett or.
Well, I understand, if it's a medical emergency, they need to go to close.
Yeah.
My whole problem was, our patients that we know truly need psychiatric help.
Yeah.
There's numerous ones throughout the week we transport almost daily. Are we not to go to St. Joe's, where I've always been taught for 6 years is the closest appropriate?
So for a polysubstance overdose, call Arnett and Arnett's physician will make the medical control decision. It just happened that I was there. I didn't care if it came to me. I got her out of there shortly after anyway.
Yeah, she was home pretty quick, but
Yeah. She was in the Arnett ICU for a day receiving
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff.
it's like 2 days later, she called again, but.
Yeah.
No,
So I'm just trying, because
If you think it's an appropriate thing for there, you can call either them there or call Arnett, and the Arnett medical control physician can make the decision for it. But if it's just a simple, I'm having a bad day, I need to talk to somebody, by all means, bring him to St. Joe's, but if there's a potential for decompensation.
No, I understand that part.
That's-
It's just, he made it well clear, we're not to bring any patients there no more. And
Yeah,
he called me and ripped me apart, and he even told me that I needed to really learn my region, and our region needs to learn our hospitals.
Alon was going
So-
a bit overboard that day, and we kept trying to wheel him back, and,
Okay.
but,
Because I even tried to explain to him,
yeah.
I've been a medic 6 years. I've been taught for those 6 years, you guys are the closest appropriate for psychiatric.
Yeah, I mean, we do
Because of
have,
BS,
we do have a BSU at St. Joe's, but if they need, a lot of the patients do get admitted to mixed medical before they ever go to the BSU. It's not uncommon in a lot of places for your
no,
psych patient.
we see it all the time. We
Yeah.
take them to corner, and they have an ICU for
The
days.
way we look at it, Dan, and you can choose to do it however you want, is that an overdose is not a psychiatric patient.
It's a
No, an overdose.
No, overdose is
An
totally different.
overdose is an overdose. An overdose is gonna come.
It's the people throwing a fit,
It's-
flipping out over nothing, or can't control themselves, they haven't taken bath salts, no drugs on board, and we're,
This particular person.
I can talk to you
Story, yeah.
about it. I can talk to you about it later. I saw you here, so I figured out we would talk about it later anyway.
I think this is considered a sidebar.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to clarify.
This might become the most contentious point of the day, so.
I mean, Charlie and I discussed this for an hour, and I'm like, "Well, Charlie, what are we doing? We're gonna fill your hospital full of all
Yeah, no, I'll let you, we can have a sidebar conversation about it if you want.
Anything else?
I do have a question, because he asked a specific question, which was, St. Joe's is a 939 hospital?
So,
St. Joe's is not.
not a 939. We do have a BSU, so just like Packer has the BSU upstairs, we have the BSU, and we have psychiatry, but we are not a 939 receiving facility. And part of the reason being, most of the time, there's only 3 doctors that ever spend any time there, and we cover about 9 shifts the whole month.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. If somebody shows up and needs a psych eval, they're walking off the street, you can provide that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can provide that service whether they come in by car,
Yeah.
by walking, or by ambulance?
Yeah.
Okay. So your question was, if it was just a simple
Yeah.
individual
Well, yeah,
who needed
because
that,
it was
that
pretty
that
much-
service is
The way
available.
he went about it, he pretty much told me that because it's AMR out of Stemac County, we were to take everything to the Stemac County Hospital, don't bring anything to St. Joe's.
No, that's not
That's-
appropriate.
This person
Just say that's how he
needs to
was
be
with the
educated.
attitude.
So-
He didn't want me to bring it, and I even made the comment, don't you want patients? That makes money for all the hospitals everywhere, you
He
know?
doesn't. That's what you're.
But that's what he said, don't bring them here, take them to corner.
That-
I was okay.
Yeah, well, we can talk
That
about
wasn't the
the
CFO you were talking to.
That's a guy that's kind of money.
So it's simple, just, I'm
You know,
not
and
that
that's,
day.
we understand that, we were just really confused when we were told nothing.
Yeah.
And when I talked to Charlie, because it all started that morning with the patient you're talking about, we'll get into that separately. but-
Yeah, we'll talk about that on the sidebar, so everyone else
That makes
can
it
go.
even worse.
Donnie?
I didn't see it on your agenda, but for those of you who don't know, Dr. Kellogg and I made the trip out to Hornell, January 17th, and met with the area QI coordinators, the area ambulances. We're very productive evening. By all accounts, it was successful. Dr. Kellogg made it back alive. I think they actually liked it,
Good.
so
They haven't got to me yet.
That's right.
we did appreciate your trip out, but I think it was a good thing. Thank you.
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Second.
All in favor?
thank you, everybody.
Was that his first trip west in the region?
Oh, yeah.
Are you scared of that?
Here, never mind.
Well, it's Stemac County, what do you got? Lon,
Elon Hatar.
yeah, Lon,
Dr. O'Connor, can you hold this
No.
up for me, just so I know how you want
I
to
can
receive
think-
communication from Stremac?
Sounds like a long kept going since that after.
Rob, 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 Elon's gonna answer that for you. Elon's
the nurse manager.
Yeah.
So what happened
There's
that
a
morning with
background to along.
Charlie called me.
I'm like.
Is the camera on?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've always,
Mr. Kimball, always.
I would, yeah, the question, did the.
Yes.